Hi, I'm Joe Heath.
I'm Toni Heath.
And this is Burn Notice Noticed, a podcast about Burn Noticed, which is a podcast about Burn Notice.
Yep.
What was the thing we were going to change it to?
I don't remember. It's not that difficult. Keep up. And then you came up with a good one.
Okay, I want to start from the top then, because I remember what it is now.
I don't. And it requires input from me.
And this is Burn Notice Noticed, your favorite podcast.
About your other favorite podcast.
Burn Noticed.
I don't know if I like that one better. Okay.
No? Okay, well, alright.
So a mildly infuriating but mostly really amusing thing just happened. I've been trying to kind of promote the podcast, Burn, Notice Noticed. And there was this one Twitter account that was like, hey, leave a GIF describing your podcast and I'll retweet your most recent episode. It's Pod People is who it is on Twitter. And so I sent them a GIF and they just retweeted an episode from us, but they retweeted today's episode of Burn Noticed.
And not our episode.
And I was like,
of
that's
Burn
not us.
Noticed.
That's not our podcast. That's the podcast this podcast is about. But it's fair.
Yeah, it's a weird concept.
So, we've been doing this podcast for a month now.
Oh shit, really?
This is the fourth one, and it's, much to my dismay, a weekly podcast. And there are 4 weeks in a month. So yes!
Well, welcome to our anniversary. I hope you got us presents. That's what you do on podcast anniversaries. You give the host presents.
You give the host.
The listeners.
You subscribe to our Patreon.
Yeah, which you can get to by going to patreon.com/Watch-A-Thon, which is for our other podcast and not this one. But hey.
Maybe one day.
Maybe.
We'll set up a separate Burn Notice Patreon.
That seems...
like a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you like to hear my recap of the episode?
Yeah, let's it's episode 4, Old Friends.
Old Friends. Unless you have any, we are now in the opening goofs segment
of
the
goofed.
podcast, according to my outline.
We already goofed.
I don't feel like we did, but we can move on.
We talked about, getting presents from our listeners. That's goof.
Okay, so, let's see. I'm turning to the appropriate page in my notes. Here's my recount of the plot of episode 4 of Burn Notice that I got from listening to episode 4 of Burn, Noticed. 1. There is an ineffective assassin who only tries to kill Michael during the B-plot.
Okay.
Very conveniently. 2. Michael teams up with his anti-incompetence porn brother to stop someone from being human trafficked.
Correct.
3. His brother's a dick. I made that a separate plot point.
You said cool motive, still a dick.
Yeah, cool motive, still a dick. Sam and Fee hate each other. The brother owes bad people money. Okay, wait, this is a thing that... So, they are doing... The case of the week this week is his brother's case.
Right.
Is his brother, a PI? Is he also a spy?
No, I don't think so. He's just an idiot.
So why does he have a case?
It's her friend from high school. He's offering to help this guy out.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't like he's a PI and he's like, I need help on this case. It was like...
Hey, you remember so-and-so from high school?
Their math teacher.
Yeah.
Because apparently he's much older than the rest of them, but they all went to high school. So his brother owes bad people money.
And specifically, I want to clarify, he's taking this case on and bringing his brother. He's like, hey, my brother can help people. And he's trying to talk his brother into it so that he can get money for it.
Right. So he doesn't really bring anything to the table, is what you're saying.
No, he just brought the case because he's like, I can talk my brother into doing this and make some money.
He's taking a commission check, really.
Yeah.
And he needs the money because he owes it to bad people. The assassin does shoot Mr. Burn Notice, but just a little. And he's fine. And they re-kidnap the kidnapped girl who is being human trafficked. Wait, they don't do that right away. Right. They kidnap the bad guys.
Yeah.
And then they have to do a trade. He almost kills the assassin using his allergies to peanuts, but he doesn't kill him and he just leaves him alone.
He puts peanut dust on his hot dog from Toni's restaurant, which is Toni with an I, by the way.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's Toni.
Nice. So. Good. Love it. So, how was my recap?
Perfect.
How would you rate my understanding of the plot of that episode?
You nailed it.
Yeah! Great.
So, I would rank their recap as solid as well. So
we both did a good job.
Good job, you guys.
Good job.
Everybody did a great job this time.
Nice.
And in this episode, they talk about how sort of good that episode is. It's competent and well written and stuff. And like now we're all doing great jobs, so it's relevant and thematic. We should all high five each other and give hugs.
We're all doing great. Speaking of doing great, do you have any top podcast moments that stood out to you?
Bri was horny. Fee was horny. There's a lot of horniness going on.
Sure.
And I was horny for that horny.
No.
I was horny for the horny.
No.
No?
You have, listen, between this and the Watch-A-Thon of Brass-On,
you know what? Go ahead.
You have maxed out your usage of the word horny for like the month.
Also, in the episode, Michael was pretending to be horny.
Okay. But we're not a podcast about Burn Notice, and we are not talking about Burn Notice.
And I'm just saying there's a horny theme, and I enjoyed, I was horny for the horny theme.
Yes. Okay. God. So, one of the things I have written down...
Sexual being, Toni.
I know, and I hate it. One of the things I have written down as a particularly good moment was that Chris describes Mr. Burn Notice as a men's restroom sign of a man, which made me laugh out loud in the office when I was listening to the episode.
It's a good description.
Yeah. Also, like, when you've met people like that, you're just like, yeah, that is what that guy's like.
A question, in this thing, can we critique a little bit about the podcast?
Yeah. I mean, listen, don't be beholden to the structure, because it doesn't matter.
They specifically point out a scene of Bruce Campbell talking about erogenous zones of feet.
Uh-huh. We all already established how much I hate seeing foot fetish stuff in TV and movies.
Yeah, but that's neither here nor there. The point I'm trying to make is that they point out this very Bruce Campbell scene. Yet at the end, they say that it's not peak Bruce Campbell, even though there was that peak Bruce Campbell scene.
Well, how much of it needs to be, like, one scene in a whole show? Is that really peak Bruce Campbell?
Well, I mean, there's that scene, there's the yogurt scene, and there's the scene where he almost gets shot and reacts hilariously to it. There's a lot of peak Bruce Campbell, and I feel like they forgot.
Here's the thing, this actually sets up something that I wanted to talk about, which is like the idea of when we do Watch-A-Thon of Brass-On, and we had somebody who listened to the Watch-A-Thon of Brass-On who has never seen any classic Who. And they told us that they would like be listening to the episode and they'd be like, man, they are really tearing into this. They must hate it. And then like we get to the end and we do our final thoughts and we're like, it was great. We loved it.
This specific person, by the way, is friend of both shows.
Yes.
Andrew Williams.
But it's like interesting to me that like through the process of like talking about it and then you get to the end and you're like, yeah, I called out these 3 specific moments that were great. But were they like that great compared to, whatever like personal bar I have? No.
Yeah, but I feel like they've given him peak Bruce Campbell for less. Do
you feel like the criterion are being applied unevenly?
Improperly, yeah.
Oh.
Though, I mean, I still don't think it would be enough to grant it a great episode of Burn Notice status. So
because it's only the one thing that was met.
Yeah, so I don't think it met any of the other criterion. So,
but you're calling them out.
Yeah,
you're wanting to fight about it.
Let's do it. Let's fight.
I do think it's interesting. We've talked before about like Bri and Chris. The kind of conceit is that Bri really loves the show and that Chris doesn't care. And
that's very well established in this almost said serial in this episode.
Specifically in that Bri says that she loves the show and has no complaints except for all of the complaints she's mentioned, which I think is like an amazing kind of summation of like. When you do a podcast like this where you're like, I love this thing so much that I just want to pick it apart until it's dead. Like, that's what these podcasts kind of are. And that's specifically why I was thinking about the thing that Andrew said about us doing the Watch-A-Thon, is that, like, we, just pick it apart, make fun of it, are, like, merciless with it, and then we get to the end and we're like, no, I loved that. That was my favorite thing. And that's kind of, like, the conceit of a lot of podcasts like this. Where you're like, I am dissecting and making fun of this thing as a sign of affection. So, like, I absolutely have no complaints about this thing that I love, except for these... How many episodes have we made of the Watch-A-Thon of Brass-On? Just hundreds not hundreds, but 100 episodes
about
of this
110,
podcast
115,
of me
like
talking about how bad it is because I love it so much.
And we love Bri and Chris.
Yeah.
Their podcast.
I did also think, so in their like little introduction bit where they say you can send us comments. You can send us comments
dangerous.
And no criticism whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And if you want to criticize them, you have to
do it in podcast form.
Yeah, that's the only acceptable form.
Right.
You have to sit down, put in the time and record it and make your own podcast. And that's the only acceptable form of criticism.
And that's what we're doing right now. You're welcome. Also, you were wrong about Bruce Campbell. I love your show and have no complaints except for your
it
Bruce
Campbell. It weirds me out when you talk to them.
Why?
I don't know.
I know they're listening. Hi.
It's like, it's the same way I don't like when I'm watching a TV show and somebody like looks in the camera and like winks and I'm like, don't look at me.
And incidentally, a happy Christmas to all of you at home.
Don't look at me. I don't want to be acknowledged. You're breaking the fourth wall of our podcast and I don't appreciate it.
Question, does a podcast have four walls? It's an audio only format, so would it have a fourth wall? Like, what's the audio equivalent of a fourth wall?
I mean, it's the same. There are no physical four walls when it comes to video medium.
Yeah, but that's a reference to a TV studio set that has only three walls, so the fourth wall's gone so they can film inside of it. So there is physically three walls. That's what that's a reference to, but an audio format doesn't have walls at all. The walls are in your mind. It might as well be the first wall. We're breaking the first wall.
I'm uncomfortable with this conversation.
We were there first.
Podcasts are just in your brain and nowhere else.
I mean, it's true. Unless it's a video podcast. And in that case, it is a fourth wall. But this isn't a video podcast. This is audio only. So it's breaking the eardrum.
I thought your concept was dumb at first, and now it's literally making me uncomfortable.
All right, let's move on.
Okay.
Eating and traveling. Let's talk about it.
Oh, you just looked over at my notes. Yeah, but we should talk about it because it was discussed a lot in this podcast, and I'd like to hear, like, what are your opinions?
Oh, I want to eat everywhere. Like, I don't think we've eaten in enough places in the place that we live. I will eat anywhere. I don't care if it's good or bad. I just want to try it. Like, and you won't go to that, what is it? The Buffalo Wild Wings?
Because I don't know what your obsession with Buffalo Wild Wings is. It's just a mediocre chain.
I've never been there. I want to make that decision for myself.
You can get wings literally anywhere, and then you've eaten at a Buffalo Wild Wings.
Okay, but you say that. But also, you had never eaten at a Burger King until you met me, and you were like, about the same thing about a Burger King. But Burger King is like my favorite fast food hamburger.
I mean, it's a decent fast food hamburger. I mean, that's a pretty low scale of things to begin with.
But I want to make these opinions on my own, and I don't get a chance to because I live with you now and we have to eat together.
You can go on a Tuesday when I'm not at home and go and spend too much money eating at Buffalo Wild Wings if that's what you want.
I'm going to do it, and we're going to talk about it on the next podcast.
I look forward to you telling me how right I am in a couple of weeks.
Actually, I can't do it for the next podcast, but maybe the one after. We'll see. It's gonna be in a future episode. My review of Buffalo Wild Wings.
This is what you want to talk about right now, is that you're mad because you've never eaten at a Buffalo Wild Wings.
I mean, there's other places that we haven't eaten at that I would like to eat at, but...
You're reminding me so much. We had this coworker who's like his favorite place to eat in the whole world was fucking Chili's.
Never eaten at Chili's, so how would I know? See, I'll go to Chili's too.
Go to Chili's. Maybe round out the trip with some Applebee's.
No, I've been to Applebee's. It's all right.
They're all on the same level. I say that, but like, I'll eat the shit out of some Red Robin every time. Yeah, but
they got that like bottomless freckled lemonade, and that shit's the bomb.com.
That's true, it is. Oh man, now on some freckled lemonade.
I also really like their bonsai burger.
Back on topic of what we're talking about is that you like to eat at a lot of different places when traveling. Yeah. Specifically, I think you like to find
diners.
Like hole-in-the-wall diners, mom and pop places, like Jefferson's.
Oh, shut the fuck up. Listen, I didn't know it was a chain.
Where were we? We were driving in between two places. We were driving back home, and we stopped at Jefferson's, and the whole time we're there, he's talking about what a cute place it is. And how he loves eating at these, like, mom and pop places. I don't know what the, like, locale, like, is, how local Jefferson's is. if it's like a chain in like the southeast or like a. But there's
probably in the south.
There's one of them within walking distance of where we both work.
I didn't know.
And
again, we haven't eaten in enough places in the area in which we live and work.
And they had dollars like stapled all over the wall, and Joe was like, "See, like this is what I mean. This is like you don't you don't get this at regular places. Like every bar doesn't do that.
Well, I don't go to bars,
so you'd never. This was your first exposure to dollars on the wall.
Yes, and I didn't know there was another Jefferson's within walking distance of our work, and they just recently opened one up next to my parents,
who live in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, I know.
So, like, literally, there are Jeffersons just everywhere. If your parents have them, everyone has them.
All right, so what is your opinion of eating at places when you go traveling? I mean, like you travel a lot for work because you're doing the Unseen World, which is a show about roadside attractions and things like that. So
here's the thing, like, I definitely understand where both of them are coming from. When I travel for work, a lot of the times I end up just eating at Waffle House because I can find it. Because there is one, and I know that I'm going to get steak and eggs. And, like, it doesn't matter what time of day it is. There is a Waffle House, and I can get steak and eggs.
I thought you did a thing where when you go on shoots, you'd ask the people you're interviewing where's a good place to eat, and you'd go eat there.
Yes. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I can see both things because it depends. Like, ideally, if you're traveling, you want to eat, like, whatever, like, oh, man, you have to have this, and you can only have it here, and, like, that's what you want. But also, sometimes you're, like, driving, and you've been driving for, like, 5 hours, and there's a sign for Waffle House, and you're like, well, I know what I'm in for.
That's true.
There's a Waffle House. I know what it's going to be about. I'm going to get myself some greasy-ass food, and then I'm going to get back on the road. So it depends on time, really. Like, if you have the time to be like, I want to go to, like, a weird sit-down restaurant. Otherwise, Waffle House, every time. It doesn't matter where you are. Just go to Waffle House. There was another moment that I really liked. This was a good episode for Chris. Yeah. A lot of good jokes. Where he was talking about how bad two of the actors were, and he said it was like two kids pretending to be adults reading lines, and that made me laugh really hard, because I could picture it so clearly.
I believe one of them has a mustache, but it looks like the kind of mustache you'd wear if you're like pretending to be a dad.
If you were a child pretending to be a grown-up.
Yeah.
That's perfect. This is when they were talking about spy tips. They were talking about you need to control your knife hand. And Bree says, of course you'll control the knife hand, you fool! Which also made me laugh really hard.
Yeah, it's obvious.
Yeah, but I particularly like the way she said it. This happened way earlier in the podcast, but I have a note that just says, who is Stephen Miller and why is Bree so savage about the way he looks? How old is he? Who is he? What's his deal?
Is it this guy? I don't know. Political advisor to the president?
I don't think so.
It's Trump's.
How old is that person? Is it Stephen Miller or is it Steve Miller?
33. Stephen Miller is 33. Steve Miller.
Wait, what?
He's a speechwriter. He's 33. He looks 50.
That man's 3 years older than us?
Yeah. If that's the guy they're talking about. It could be Steve Miller from the Steve Miller Band. Which is what I thought they were talking about. I was very confused.
How old is he?
He's 75.
So he's supposed to look that old.
And he looks a bit like Russell Crowe. So, hey, Bri and Chris, which Steve Miller are you talking about?
I have written down Stephen Miller, and I can only assume I wrote down Stephen instead of Steve because they said Stephen.
Right, and that would make... I mean, I feel like they're up on, like, politics and stuff, so that's
in a way that we are not.
I don't remember what they were saying about Stephen Miller.
Just that he looks like ass. That he looks like an old, wrinkly ass.
I mean, he does look old, but he doesn't look wrinkly. He almost looks too smooth, really. Look at it. It looks like someone took his head and just like...
There's a lot of head, isn't there?
Yeah.
I mean, I think maybe that's specifically what they were talking about. Is that he's young, but, like, has no hairline. Whoa, that's a bad one. He looks wrinkly in that picture.
That is a lot of head, though.
We've pretty much clicked through all of my notes. I did have written down that it seems like Chris is looking at the show through more of like a structural point of view, which makes sense from what I know about Chris as a writer.
I do want to say there's one thing he said right at the end of the podcast where he said they've already seen the next episode and they heavily hinted that it's not good.
Right.
But they were like, that we still want you to listen to the episode, the next episode, because it's going to be a good episode. And I say, that's for us to decide.
Because they signed off this time by saying that this was an episode of a podcast, and I was like, hey, I'll let you know if it was an episode of a podcast.
Yeah, that's our judgment, not yours.
That's not for you to say. That's for us to say.
Yeah, you can't just call it.
Technically, the only thing we haven't done, discuss the Bri-Chris dynamic.
It's definitely there. Listen, it's Bri and Chris. I don't know, this Bri-Chris dynamic thing.
Do you want to cut it out of the show?
I don't know. We gotta figure out what we're doing. Like, the thing is, what are we talking about? What are we talking about when we said the Bri-Chris dynamic? You're
the one who proposed it as a tenet of the show.
I know.
So as far as what we're talking about, I don't fucking know.
Is there an instance where Bri is Chris's daddy? I guess that's a dynamic.
That is the dynamic that they have, yeah.
Is there an instance of Chris being annoyed at the show and Bri being defensive about it? Because, yeah, that's there, too. There's specific instances of that. Is there a specific instance of Bri being Chris's daddy?
Not that I wrote down, so...
That needs to be for a great episode of Burn Notice. Maybe that's the criterion, is
Bri has to be Chris's daddy?
Yeah, or Chris is very annoyed and Bri is defensive about it.
I think what would make a great episode if that Chris was Bri's daddy. Because then you'd be like, what? What's happening here?
Yeah, but when you want a great episode of this podcast, you want what makes the podcast good. What is essential to it, not counter to it.
Yeah.
Is Bri Chris's daddy?
Not particularly. I'm not writing that down in the nice typed up notes I have of this show.
I'll write it in. I'll write it in. But okay, I think that's the dynamic. It's Bri Chris's daddy, and it's Chris annoyed and Bri defensive. Specifically about the same thing. Not like Chris is
in
annoyed.
general.
Yeah. Like Chris has to be annoyed about something and Bri has to be defensive about it. Okay. About the same thing. I think that's a good metric.
Would you like to go ahead and rate this episode?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Was this a great episode of a podcast?
Okay. Did it change how you think about something?
No.
In fact, it further established how I feel about food. Did it make you cry?
No.
Did it make you laugh?
Yes. And I will say, because we have a qualifier on this one, I laughed like from my gut laugh at just a restroom sign version of a man. That made me laugh really hard.
I think I laughed really hard at uncomfortably at like Chris saying very dirty things. Fucker.
You know what I'm gonna do?
What?
I'm gonna make a cut of Chris saying terrible things from Burn Notice, and I'm gonna post it, and it's gonna be awful.
Perfect, wonderful. So 1 of 3, so not a great episode of a podcast.
Yeah, but it hit 1 of the 3, which I think is the first time it's ever done that.
For you.
For me.
I've laughed at every single one of them. You funny motherfuckers.
From the gut.
Yeah. Yes. Listen, again, I'm in public.
So you're lying. So you're lying because you want to make them feel good. You have to quit being so soft on this rating system. This is serious.
No, listen, because if that's the case, I'm never going to.
Ever?
Ever.
Not ever? Not one time?
No. Even like if I'm listening to like the funniest thing I've ever heard, I won't laugh in public at work.
That's weird. So like, how do you know then? Like, what's your bar?
I can feel it. Like, I'm restraining it. I'm restraining the laughter.
But like, were you restraining a chuckle?
No, it was like a guffaw.
That's a guffaw's not.
That's a big laugh.
It doesn't feel like
I would have been laughing a lot had I not been at work.
I feel like the very fact that you can restrain it means it wasn't that funny.
I didn't hear you laughing from down the hall. Actually, I did once.
You did, at least once, and it was the time that I mentioned.
You for it.
What?
I was like, what is that lonely person doing down there laughing?
I was listening to a podcast where my friends were being funny.
All right, let's move on.
Okay, you're wrong, and like at some point we're gonna have to resolve this because it's effectively messing up our entire rating system because you don't know how to laugh like a human being. We're gonna have to get into it at some point. But fine, let's move on.
I can't laugh alone. It's weird.
What?
I have a hard time laughing alone.
Laughing is like a social activity.
Yeah.
Okay, you're right. We have to move on, but we are going to have to get into it at some point.
Okay. Is it a great episode of Burn, Noticed?
So, like, all of our criteria for this is we hate it. Chris and Bri experience a dynamic shift. I'm crossing that out. I'm crossing it out.
Yeah, because now it's daddy and annoy/defend.
I don't think that makes it a great episode. That makes it a good episode. Because this is a thing that happened in.
Well, listen. I mean, their criteria for a great episode of Burn Noticed is spy tips that are useful.
Yeah, this is not Burn, Noticed.
I know, but listen, theirs are spy tips that are useful.
Yeah.
Bruce Campbell gets to be Bruce Campbell. Fiona gets to blow stuff up. I think a third thing.
So really, what we're saying is like.
Is there the elements of this show?
Is Bri used effectively? Is Chris used effectively?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
And
then the rest that we got here, too.
Okay.
And in fact, I'd probably cut out the I am entertained for the duration of the podcast, because that's...
An episode of a podcast?
Yeah, it's going to be assumed that we like it, because we like them, and I don't think there's going to be an episode where we're like, that was boring. If it happens, then...
I mean, for me, the thing of that is for the duration. So, like, definitely when I'm listening to podcasts, I'm like, hang on, I'm going to pause this, I'm going to get up, and I'm going to, like, do other things, or...
If that's the case, then it's going to be like the laughing thing, because I don't, especially, like, conversational podcasts, I don't always pay 100% attention. Like, even to, like, The Adventure Zone or Mabim Bam.
God, I know, you did not pay enough attention to the fucking finale of Balance, and it hurt my feelings.
I was annoyed by it, but that's...
We don't have to get into that right now. We should finish ranking this episode.
Just narrating as hell. Anyway.
It's beautiful, and it made me cry, and I kept looking over, and I'm, like, crying, like, tears coming down my face, and you're, like, bored, like, looking at your phone, and I'm like... Feeling emotion. Okay.
He also uses camera angles too much. Anyway, I like The Adventure Zone, but the finale I had some issues with. Anyway, so yeah, I would say we change it. We keep this one.
Okay.
We get rid of this one, and we change this one into two. We change it into the daddy dynamic and the annoy defend dynamic.
Don't want to codify the word daddy as part of our podcast. I don't want to do it.
The Bri boss.
Fine, I will
Boss
go with
Bri.
Boss Bri. Fine.
I mean, daddy dynamic's way funnier, but...
Anyway, so, like, okay, fine. I'm crossing things out. I'm writing new things down. Let's rank it.
Okay.
Go through them with me.
Daddy dynamic. Is it present?
I don't know.
I don't remember. I don't think there was
I wasn't looking for it because it wasn't part of the criteria before just this moment.
Right. Well, this will be something we can look for moving forward. But I don't specifically remember a daddy dynamic. Maybe there was... Maybe this is like the Bruce Campbell thing, and we just forgot about it. But I'm going to say no to the daddy dynamic.
Okay.
Was there what was the other one? The annoy defend position. Yes, there was.
Yes.
Because Chris was like openly saying, like, this is bad, and Bri was like, well, you know.
I mean, he did say that this is the best episode of Burn Notice that he's seen so far.
Yeah, but there was one specific scene where he was specifically talking about how bad it was.
The scene of the podcast.
No, I'm saying there was a specific scene of the episode he was talking about. No, there wasn't a specific scene of Burn, Notice. There was a specific bit in the podcast where he was talking about a specific scene. Not just like the overall thing, but like a specific scene and was like tearing into it. I think it might even have been... you know what it was? It was Fee's acting in that one scene. And like he was like, it was very much or whatever. And she's like, well, she's very much. So like that was the... So yes, I would say the annoy defend dynamic is there.
Okay.
And lastly... feel like you know what happened in the episode of Burn Notice, and I'd say yes, you did.
Yeah, you gave me a 10 out of 10 on that, right?
I did.
Hell yeah.
So that's 2 out of 3.
So, great episode of Burn, Noticed?
Yes.
Okay. You know what? I feel confident about our reworked ranking system. I like it.
Especially because it has daddy dynamic. I can't even say it.
I'm not going to call it that.
The daddy dynamic.
Okay.
All right, and lastly, it is an episode.
It's an episode of a podcast. Which we get to decide.
Not you.
Not you, Chris. So now you got me doing it.
Now
I'm talking to him.
Now you're breaking the audio barrier.
The podcast barrier.
You're reaching out through the sound waves, addressing the audience.
I want to talk about it. Here's why it bothers me. I feel like it's known on this podcast that Bri and Chris are our friends.
Yes.
But I feel like when we do the podcast, we have to have like a certain level of like...
professional distance?
Yes.
Nah.
We can't be worried about like, oh, I don't want to say it's not a great episode because then I'll feel bad. No, we have criteria set. We have a rubric. It either meets it or it doesn't.
I know, and I agree with that, and like that's why I like have.
That's why
there's some things that I had problems with because I'm like
it wasn't
weird.
It wasn't ranking what it was supposed to be ranking. I think
Yes.
it does now, but again, I
The
just
only
want to
one
reiterate.
yeah,
I need you to work on keeping that professional distance.
it's fair. The only one we have to work on is the laughing one because that's the only
Because
one.
you're not a human being, I guess.
No, I'm just an anxious human being.
I've got to. So what I don't understand is like how you know. Like I don't understand what to replace it with. Of like, how does Joe know if something's really fun? Like how something's really fucking funny.
I don't know how to. I don't know.
We're gonna have to. We'll talk about it.
Just edit together a compilation of the funniest bits and play them for me and see if I laugh.
Oh, we'll set the scale. Well, I like that. But if I'm there, won't that ruin the results? I will have to make it and then leave. It'll have to be self-reporting because you can laugh if I'm there.
I can laugh. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. This is weird. I just think if it's funny, it's funny. Like, if I think that it's funny, then it's funny.
I'm going to have to establish some kind of scale, though, that's outside of just like, I thought it was funny.
Well, let's work on it.
Okay, I'm going to come up with some kind of experiment where I play a bunch of Mabim Bam clips.
We did that last night.
We did do that last night.
And I
instead
laughed
of
so
sleeping.
hard I couldn't breathe.
That's what I'm
and I
saying.
also farted a few times.
Disgusting. Thanks for sharing that on the podcast.
Anyway.
You said anyway and started doing stuff on your work computer. Is that your new sign off?
Yeah. Bye. I got work to do.
Anyway, our lunch break is over. So, and then you just wander away.
I mean, you're in my office.
I know, that's part of what makes it so awkward. I'm just sitting in here like, are you coming back?
But is there anything else we need to talk about? Anything else we need to do?
I don't know. There was something else that I wanted to cover, but this whole episode had a weird energy. It was very aggressive.
Fuck you.
Very combative.
Fuck you.
Hey, fuck you.
All right.
Listen.
Fair enough. It has like a real, like, horny vibe.
God. You are banned from the word.
All right. I'll stop saying horny, Daddy.
Okay, I am gonna just get up and leave.
All right, we done?
Yeah, we're done.
We're done here. Okay. Thanks for listening. I've been and still am Joe Heath.
I'm already leaving. Goodbye.
You've been... Wait, what is it? What did I say?
I don't know.